Stephen McClure, CEO of Canary Capital, thinks that $3 billion could buy spot XRP goods in the first 24 hours. What might the price of XRP be on the first day if everything goes as planned? Based on Jake Claver's idea about XRP's market cap multiple, what I'm about to say is just the start. We'll also look at what happened with Ethereum and Bitcoin, right? What did they do before the spot ETFs for Bitcoin? How much did the market cap multiply? What did it do after you put them in? That's why I brought it up. It's fun to talk about this and see how everything goes together. Let's watch this video. Paul Barron and Clark Stevens. That's exactly what it was. Around 3.2 billion in the first day. You don't think it's shown enough that an ETF could get more than $5 billion in XRP in a month? I think it is, yes. That seems to me it looks like a very safe bet. Yes, I think that's true. Let us go a little further back in time. A lot of money came in on the first day when I worked for another company and we started Bitcoin futures. That meant it was one of the 10 best of all time. It was the 14th most valuable ETF of all time when it reached $100 million. That's all for the first day. And even though I don't look at Bitcoin futures, I think XRP might have done better than Bitcoin futures. It won't be as common as Bitcoin, but I think XRP does 2 or 3 billion in a day if Bitcoin does 1 billion in a day. Sometime that's interesting. Futures have also been very important for XRP. That could be a sign of something very big. Paul Barron talks about XRP futures on CME and says that the price went up to $1 billion very quickly. I think faster than any other cryptocurrency. Today is August 31st. Let me play this. It was 30 or 32 days ago. Jake Claver talks about how much XRP is worth at the moment. Let me play it for you, and then we'll talk about the range. This XRP boost keeps getting good reviews. Is that really true? Do you also have an example? This is the piece that talks about that. A lot of people check out how much XRP is out there. Really, the only thing that will change the price of XRP is how much of it is out there. Here is the multi-booster you will get. There are still 2 billion XRP on some sites, but most likely not that much. If you count shops, it's less than 2 billion on exchanges. We need to remember these amounts, what they're getting rid of or selling. If XRP was worth $10, $20, $50, or $100, people would sell it right away. You could make more money. Take care of the markets. Retail doesn't have more than 1.222 billion XRP in total, based on those kinds of numbers and the amount that's on the sites. From my point of view, Digital Wealth Partners is in charge of around $200 million of that right now. From what I can tell, this means that Digital Wealth Partners today hold about 1/8 of retail. XRP, if you only had 2 billion out of 100 billion, you'd be 50 times what the Dean talks about when he talks about the total supply versus the available stock. This is why there is a multiplier effect. That's why the change in how much cash is coming in will make the market cap go up more than if the change was spread out over the whole supply, or just the offer supply. Anyway, this has nothing to do with stock that is being used. It's not about the 59 billion and some change. Jake says that below 2 billion is the real amount on platforms. Now let's take a look at these numbers. It was my plan to put up 3 billion and 5 billion. Some people are interested in what happens when it gets even bigger. So I also wanted to use 50, 100, and 250x. That's why I picked 50 and 100, right? It's because 50x is the number of Zach Rector and Jake Claver. So, putting $3 billion into a spot XRP ETF on the first day should cut the supply in half, right? It's likely that you'll get close. Platform up to 1 billion XRP back if you spend 3 billion XRP in one day. There is only 1 billion XRP left on sites right now. This would make it 100 times stronger, and even less if there were only 500 million on platforms, right? About 250 million would be close. That's the reason I picked these amounts. I hope that makes sense. Look at this, 3 billion, this is 5 billion. These are the costs. Now, as you can see, adding 100 times 3 billion would give you 150 XRP. You know I want to show you something, right? We know this because it has happened before. A lot of things come to mind when I hear this. Now I'm going to tell you the truth. I'll then tell you how I really feel. The spot Bitcoin ETF began in January 2024, but there was still a lot of Bitcoin on platforms at that time. The amount of cash that was available above Bitcoin did not drop by a lot because of this. Indeed, things got better right before that. Big institutional investors, as expected, put Bitcoin into custody partners to counteract the large loss of GEBTC. This happened around the same time that most people bought ETFs in the first few weeks. There used to be more than one number, but now there is more than one. As many as 100 times more money would come into Bitcoin every day before the spot Bitcoin ETF. We can see that it was more like 4x after the ETF though, right? A lot of stock was put up for sale because everyone thought it would be bought off. Jake's idea says that stores only have about 2 billion XRP right now, right? That amount might not be enough. Digital Wealth Partners has 200 million of them. Okay, in other words, it means the 50 to 57 billion other institutions that have cash on hand. Now explain why banks would handle this differently for XRP compared to Bitcoin and Ethereum. They would have to flood the market with XRP to sell it if Jake thinks this will go the way he thinks it will. This is what's going on, what's on my mind right now. Some parts of my brain are telling me to hold on a second and set off bright red lights. Even though I can see why we might want to be excited about these numbers, I also want you to know about these red lights. It sounds great, but will things really go the way Zach and Jake think they will? I believe the market cap will go up, but I only believe it will happen when there is a lot of trade in the token. Right, that will help this be more fair. If you win, will you get 200x or 500x? How long will the tube hat last? Yes, if it goes the way Bitcoin did, it won't last long. Not long at all. I just wanted to show you that and check to see if that ring works. Let's keep going. We are talking to Brad Garland's house. This interested me. It was talked about today on Digital View. I know it's an old clip, but this is about a Federal Reserve coin. Since the US passed a rule against CBDCs, the Federal Reserve can't start one. What would the US do now if they wanted to start using a digital dollar, for example? Do you know what the US government could do if they chose this path? Of course, it would have to be a private company that all of those countries and groups trusted. The dollar is still used for a lot of business around the world. How about you? Would you like to rip or build a site where XRP could one day be used instead of Fed? Due to the fact that XRP is an NYW work on an open source project, we think about how to make it really useful for the people we help. Not only that, we also think about how to make it bigger and how to join the open source group so that different kinds of people can use it. What about those things? Can central banks use them? They could, for sure. One day, what they make might be better. That's what I think we all end up focusing on. What can we do to make this work better for our clients? We're focusing on business banks and payment companies, right? Now clients, there's no doubt that we are considering what other types of people we could help. In the early days of the company, Amazon Books was the name of the store that sold books. I've said this before, but I don't think I've shown it on TV. It went to war with Barnes and Borders. Lovely. I still think of Ripple as a business that helps people send money to other countries. We think of ourselves as a CM company that makes Bitcoin rules. Check payments are the first thing we worked on. Go ahead. This is to make sure we're good at cross-border transfers before we go after another space. We will go after other companies that use these tools, though in the future, you might be ready to use the FedCoin or the OneCoin. So I did. The head of blockchain technology at JP Morgan told me they would sell all of their JP Morgan coins if the Fed made any. That's why I want to know if you're okay with the idea of I agree that it is very open. You may already know this, but the US Federal Reserve uses even with coins, there needs to be a cross-border payment.